Welcome to Accounting Life with Jotham Ty, a space where we'll talk about anything and everything surrounding the people that grind through your month-end accounting close.
Hi, everyone. Today's episode is From Accountant to Startup Founder. Our guest today is Guzel Lumpkin, CFO at Innova Medical Group. On this episode, the tables have turned. We welcome back Guzel Lumpkin from our first two episodes to interview our very own Jotham Ty about his journey from accountant to entrepreneur to CEO and the lessons he's learned along the way. Now, I'll hand it over to our host, Gappify CEO Jotham Ty.
Hi, Guzel. How's it going? Thanks for joining us again on another episode.
Hi, Jotham. So excited to be here. I'm pumped today.
I'm excited, but maybe I'm nervous too, because for this episode, we're actually going to flip the table around and you, Guzel, will be interviewing me. So I'm very excited to hear about the questions that you have. And I guess I will turn over officially the hosting reins to you as of right now.
Yes, thank you, Jotham. So I don't know if our listeners will remember, but very first episode we did, you and I, it was Big Four to CFO. And today, I think we're going to do a Big Four to CEO. And I'm so excited that we're switching tables here and I get to ask you questions because I feel like our listeners could learn a lot. And we don't see a lot of accountants in general, finance professionals, going into a CEO and entrepreneurship route. It's very rare. I mean, we could probably count together on one hand how many of former accountants that we know that end up building their, successful businesses in tech, let's say, especially like Michael with Flowcast. And I don't know if I could even think of another one.
Daniel at Audit Board.
Jotham with Gappify. And so I'm so excited that you and I are talking about today. So I think what would be helpful for our fellow accountants and listeners to really learn about is where did it all start for you as an accounting career? Give us a short overview of how did you become an accountant? What triggered you? Was it your parents that wanted you to become an accountant? Is it something else? Give us that story.
Yeah, so the quick story. Wow, this is going to be very interesting, Guzel. I'll try to keep it short, but I took an accounting class in my first year at college. And the debits and credits and how it made so much logical sense. I just clinged on it. I think it was a magical moment. I was like, I can get this. And I also really appreciated how accounting gives you access to business language, right? So it's not here's just some numbers, you have to understand the context around the numbers. So I thought it was a good combination of applying where I think my natural talents were, that logical debits and credits, cause and effect relationship. But also I wanted to know more about corporate America. So yeah, once I started getting down that path in college, then of course I positioned myself, kind of through the traditional trajectory, went with public accounting first. I went with a national firm, a smaller national firm, MGO, for a couple of years, and then I became a senior at KPMG. So yeah, from there, then my journey got a little more non-traditional.
So tell us, so what triggered, so you're having this amazing career as an accountant, right? When was that aha moment that, hey, I think I want to do something with the knowledge that I have? Typically I'll speak for myself too, is we're accountants and finance professionals, knowing and understanding the value of dollar, the value of security and predictability, we just naturally risk averse. So tell us about what was that aha moment?
Yeah, and I'm gonna answer that question by also aging myself. So in 2004, when I was at KPMG, that's when Sarbanes-Oxley was first mandated. And so I was doing the first audits at KPMG in San Francisco for SOX. And the consultants on the client side were telling me about all the opportunities that they were getting. And so they started talking me into going the other side. So of course, any accountant, I broke down the pros and cons, yeah, so much stability. I have a promising career at KPMG. Everyone's great. I love the company. I love my friends there. Or do I take the risk and do this really risky but really seemingly functional idea of providing stock services. So after, of course, a spreadsheet of the pros and cons, I decided to start my own SOX practice. And that was kind of like the first big risk I took in my life. And Gazelle, my mom, cried when she heard I was leaving a stable Big Four job.
Why did she cry? What was she worried about?
Just the usual, right? Like she wants something steady, stable, which of course, like, the accounting profession provides. But I thought, I did the analysis. I'm like, hey, you know what? If stocks doesn't work out for some reason, and I was only 23 years old at the time, if that doesn't work out, I can always go back to the Big Four, right? It wasn't like it was completely, it was de-risked in a way.
You
So
never
that
burn
helped a lot.
bridges on the way out, right? I guess so you can leave the door open to go back in. Again, hedging our bets, right? As accountants and as finance professionals.
Yeah, and I always wonder, and I know you're the one asking me the questions this episode, but I always wonder, like, what is it about us accountants where we have to do that risk analysis? Is it like nature in our nature? Is it like nurture in our training? I don't know, but every time I've had these like big milestones of starting a company, I've always done like a pros and cons and de-risking, very elaborate analysis, including when I started Gappify.
So tell us how the Gappify idea came about, and you were running your SOX services business. When was that another aha moment for you?
The biggest aha moment was knowing that I and my small team were providing the manual work and services to our clients that I know could be automated. And also, like, I just grew a knack for process improvement and system implementations. And so I really wanted to combine all the knowledge of like the process narratives and the flow charts that I drafted over the years, all the system implementation experiences that I've had, and do something like big and amazing for the profession. So that was like, it was functional, but it also was inspirational because I wanted to do something meaningful to this profession that you probably know from all my social media posts. I'm super proud to be an accountant.
So one of the observations that I kind of made, and I was thinking through when I was trying to figure out, okay, where do technical accountants usually go when they think about a business, starting a business? And it typically ends up being in professional services, right? Either fractional CFO, either fractional accountant, or outsourced accounting or technical accounting services, whatever it is, right? But it's professional services, which in essence is not scalable, right? And could be automated, right? How do you scale yourself is the question all the time. And so it sounds like you saw a problem, right? That accountants quarter after quarter, month after month needed to automate. And where did you start? So how do you start? You say, now I have an idea. Now I have an idea. I see a problem. I know how it can be automated, but I'm not an engineer. I'm not a developer. I've never done this before, starting a business. Where do you even start?
Very good question. And of course, that is really like one of the biggest like roadblocks for anyone thinking about doing software or technology. I think you just have to be really good about documenting, visualizing like what you want. So I remember in my early days, I had no idea like how to wireframe or mock, but I just like threw something, of course, on a spreadsheet. So gosh, yeah, I didn't think about that. Well, my early mocks of Gappify were in spreadsheets. And I'm from the Philippines, and so Upwork has a lot of talented engineers in the Philippines. So I was like, "Hey, Mr. Engineer, can you help me build this?" And he took that, and of course, took a lot of different iterations, and one thing led to another. But I think starting with like knowing what you want and being very detailed about like how your product flows and how the users navigate through it. Yeah, I think that's probably the hardest part, right? Because you would know this too, Gazelle, in the accounting space, if you want to automate here, and I actually just spoke to a VC a few hours ago about this, there's so many opportunities, right? Like we do accruals, there's a couple ones that about that's on our roadmap. but you can go up and down that month close checklist and find new opportunities. So that's not the hardest part. It's usually like, how do I operationalize like these concepts?
What about, so what do we, when you look at that and you made a decision and you started a business, you put your idea on paper, you found an engineer. Now then what? Like, what about the legal? What about setting up a company? Like, who do you go to? How do you find those connections? Is there a book somebody can read? Is there a place somebody can go and say, okay, here's how to start the business? What did you do?
Well, thankfully these days there's a lot of good service providers who can just do it as a concierge like type service for any startup that wants to start. Obviously, if you have the budget to do that, I would recommend it, right? Because there's a lot of things you have to think about, like city, business license, filing with the state, FEIN. But you know what? Like, I think a lot of entrepreneurs that I've spoken to focus on that too early on, like just trying to operate like a legit business, which is important. I think though, like just focusing on like validating the product and getting like some type of prototype, I would recommend like spending more time on that than like the legal entity relationship of the business. But if you do need to have that foundation in place, there are good service providers. We used I think LegalZoom or something like that back in the day.
Phenomenal. So tell me now about, like, looking back, now you've been at it for a few years, you've done some fundraising. What would you say the most enjoyable part of your journey, of your new role as a CEO, as a founder?
So this is something I enjoy, but also that I value a lot of, and that has benefited our business tremendously. It's the community, right? Like, I remember the early days, because I had good friends at KPMG that were just willing to provide feedback, good contacts from my consulting days who were willing to pilot my product. Just like the relationships that you build with the accounting community is like, and them helping you to get through those early days. That's what I think about when you get nostalgic about the early days of Gappify, all the help that we got, and we still get a lot of help from our community these days. So that's enjoyable, but also that's essential, right? Because you need to get your product, if it's an accounting product, in front of accountants.
What did you not expect going into, if you look back, what advice would you give yourself when you first decided to found something? What was unexpected that was something completely from the left field for you?
I mean, hands down, like I have a very strong opinion about this specifically, and it's obviously if your desire is to be venture back and kind of take that seed round to the next stages, a type approach. Fundraising, there's a skill to it that you need to pick up. So it's not just like you can show as an accountant. I thought, hey, some good graphs that go hockey stick gets you through the first and second meetings, but there's a storytelling aspect that's important for socializing the excitement around your business, right? You can't just like throw some function like, oh, accruals, everyone needs it. Like, that's not going to get you anywhere. Even showing nice logos, which fortunately we were able to do, it's not going to get you all the way there. You kind of have to know how to story tell to different types of investors. And that's going to be such an essential component to you having the capital and resources to grow your business. I would have spent more time like understanding that craft earlier in my entrepreneur journey.
Awesome. That's a wonderful advice. It's interesting because it is a skill for sure. And when you go into more finance journey, I think you have to pick up that story because you have to tell the story behind the numbers. But as an accountant, we're not a storyteller. Like if you're thinking about accounting person who's doing close, technical accounting, it's usually very black and white-ish, right? And so how did you pick up that storytelling skill?
I think out of survival. But yeah, you're spot on with that comment. Like, if we storytell in accounting, that's bad. We get in trouble. Like it's supposed to be black and white. So you realize after, and so what I did when we started pitching pre-seed to VCs, I just, oh my gosh, I took a very accounting approach, of course. Now I think about it, I got feedback, and as the more the same feedback that I got, I was able to like draw the relationships on what wasn't resonating, and then as I was plotting like the different reasons why firms were passing, I got help from folks on the VC side who was willing to give me advice, and that all kind of centralized around like this idea that I was not storytelling like well enough. Like, yes, Jotham, you have a bold idea, but it's not resonating in your deck or in your very accountant stoic presentation.
That's awesome. So going back to accountants and not a risk taker type of idea, so myself and listeners understand better. Are you a risk taker by nature? Like, do you gamble? Do you invest in individual stocks in the market? Like, describe us, tell us who you are as a person on a risk-taking level.
Yeah, not a risk taker at all. And I know people find that hard to believe because I've started 2 businesses now. But I feel like in both businesses, I did very thorough and rigorous analysis to kind of quantify what I was going to get myself into. So with Gappify, like I knew what I needed to start the business from a capital perspective. I knew how much capital I had. Thankfully, I was able to bootstrap in the early years because of my consulting business. Very important, by the way, if you can do that, like you can't rely on VC money to show up on day one, especially in this market. So yeah, to answer your question, penny slots too at the casino. I just like the thrill and the lights, less so like the payout. I'm your classic accountant, Guzel, in that way.
Okay, so it sounds like you're classic accountant. So what advice would you give to classic accountants out there, and maybe some finance professionals that have a great idea, but cannot get themselves to say, okay, this is time. I want to do it. I want to invest in myself. Maybe there is a voice in their head that's talking to them and talking them down of the idea. What would you tell them?
Yeah, I would go through a very like rational approach of like evaluating your idea, right? So rational meaning just because you have an idea that you got excited about doesn't mean it's going to work, right? There's a process of diligence that you can perform to vet out whether your idea is viable or not. So, if I wanted to automate, like, I don't know, some part of the legal process because I experienced it personally, that's a good starting point. But, there's a very methodical way you can vet with other people, like whether there's legs in that idea. And that would be my number one advice. You can always take this genesis of an idea, apply some rigor around evaluating its viability, and put yourself in a position where you're taking a calculated risk. I mean, of course, like starting a business is still a risk by and large, but if you can de-risk certain components and accept the risk, oh my gosh, I'm going back to my audit days now, accept the risk, then you'll feel better about what you're getting yourself into. But do know at the end of the day, it's still a risk. So you have to be comfortable with that, hopefully, isolated level of risk.
I love that. And I love that you're not a risk taker, but yet you are a success story with the company that you started and how well you're doing. And my hats off to you. You're very inspirational to me.
Oh.
And I'm sure you're very inspirational to a lot of accountants out there that will be listening to us. And congratulations on your success so far. It's been amazing to watch you in the last couple of years.
Well, thank you. We've got a lot of work ahead of us, and we're definitely proud of our success. But as I mentioned earlier, this has been, and I think will continue to be, a community effort. And we're just very grateful that we can automate for the profession that is supporting us. And folks like you, and I think also folks in our profession have a lot of talent. So, maybe this is a good way to close out, but know that we have a lot of really relevant professional experience that will help us execute better than most when starting a new startup idea. So I hope more will be encouraged to take the leap and really make tangible these ideas that they have.
Take the risk, calculate the risk, but take the risk, right? And see what comes
Take
out.
the risk, penny slots.
Love it. Well, it was a pleasure learning from you on how to start your business and how to act on your idea. And this was wonderful. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
I had a great time. Thanks for interviewing me this time, Guzel.
My pleasure, Jotham.
Thanks for stopping by. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you want more information, please check us out at Gappify.com, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.